Have you ever been in a car that just broke down while you were driving? You know, you're pumping the gas pedal, nothing's happening, and you have to slowly coast over to the side of the road. That's kind of how I feel about the 21-22 Aston Villa run-in to end the season. We're on the shoulder, our hazards are blinking. We don't really know exactly what the true problem is, but we now have to wait for help to arrive, and it could be expensive, and we don't know how long it's going to take. Let's hope we broke down outside a fine establishment that serves something like, Nika from the barrel Japanese whiskey, because this is fine, as we review Wolves 2, Aston Villa 1. Welcome inside a rather gloomy Parlour, which is why I've donned a jacket from better years to try to make myself feel better after Wolves did the double on us, and only Everton, Norwich, and Watford have more losses this season than Aston Villa. So I want to go back to November and the dismissal of Dean Smith, because at the time, the narrative from the ownership and the executives was that this squad was good enough, it was built correctly, but it wasn't living up to expectations, therefore it was a managerial issue. Christian Purslow said at the time, Jack Grealish is gone, we've replaced him with Danny Ings, Emi Buendia, and Leon Bailey. Yes, the value of both may have been similar, but can we sit here today and say that those three players who came in have replaced what Jack Grealish left when he moved to City? And then there was Dean Smith. And by the way, I was caned, slaughtered on this show for being a Smith apologist because I said change is risky. And it's not so much about being a Smith apologist. It's about really wanting a plan and sticking to that plan, because that's what stability is. And Dean Smith represented the most stability at this club since Martin O'Neill was here. Can we now sit here almost 5 months on from November and say that the problems around Aston Villa and the squad were exclusively down to Dean Smith? I'll give you my answer. I think that's debatable, but feel free to leave your comments below. It's so easy for armchair critics like me to manage a game after the fact, in hindsight, in retrospect, and the people on social media claiming to be experts who would have started that guy or made that substitution sooner, or who claim, it's my favorite, he got his tactics wrong. There's no pressure on us. We're not under the gun. We're not managing a staff or squad of human beings trying to progress a multi-million-dollar enterprise week upon week. Steven Gerrard is just 20 games into his Premier League managerial career, and he's just into his 4th year of senior management. He's learning, growing, evolving on the job. But he has 8 wins and 10 losses, and he had the luxury of bringing in 2 pretty darn good footballers in the winter window, and it just feels like the fortunes have not only not changed, but it feels like we're seeing the same issues that we've seen over the past couple of seasons. Is that exclusively a squad problem? I mean, is the manager somehow above criticism here? Because one thing you notice is there seems to be a reluctance to make change sooner. How many times have we said during the course of this season, whoa, Steven Gerrard is going to have to go full-on hairdryer on these guys at halftime, and then the second half rolls around and the exact same squad comes out onto the field? Or in a game itself, we're waiting for a proactive change to be made, and it doesn't come until after the 70th minute or so. And another thing that concerns me is, let's be honest, Steven Gerrard just has way too big a coaching entourage in his dugout. I mean, you've got Michael Beale, who he depends on highly, Gary McAllister, Tom Culshaw, but then you still have Aaron Danks, Austin McPhee, Big Cuts, and whoever else, sports psychologists. That's too many layers of opinions, too much administration in order to make quick and proactive decisions. Villa were down 2-0, and in the 72nd minute, with 18 minutes left to go, Douglas Luiz comes on for Morgan Sanson. And then 2 minutes later, Phil Coutinho comes off. Yes, maybe He was worn out after international travel halfway around the world. He didn't look the best, but I still think Villa have a better chance of getting something with him on the park. And yes, Emi Buendia needed to be in that game, but he needed to be in that game earlier. Sometimes I just wish Steven Gerrard would trust his footballing instincts and be bold. Never mind what your staff says or hurting their feelings. Never mind hurting the feelings of the players. Be bold. And I think that will come in time. But the question is, how much time will that take? And how much squad turnover will it take to bring in the kind of players that he said after the game will come fight for me? Because remember, at Rangers, it took him 3 years to overhaul that squad and get the combination right. 3 years in a league with a 2-horse race. Oh boy, doing this hurts, especially after another Derby loss and having the double done over you. The Holy Trinity, the 3 big issues or moments that defined Wolves 2, Villa 1, starting with the key statistics. And yes, when you are chasing a game, trailing by 2 goals, you are going to get a lion's share of the possession. And look at that. Villa outpossessed Wolves 52-48 and yet still lost, which has happened numerous times this season. Ollie Watkins, for the second time in a row, has lost 5 duels in a game, 4 on the ground, 1 in the air. But Villa pretty well took care of everything else. 84% accurate passing, more shots, same amount on target. And Ollie Watkins contributed to Aston Villa's XG immensely. We'll talk about that later, but doesn't mean much when you lose the game. Honorable mention, and I've said it on this show numerous times. Tyrone Mings is incapable of effectively heading the football in the opponent's penalty area. He could do it for England in a midweek friendly, but for Aston Villa in this game, 3 times the ball was played inch perfectly to him, and he fluffed his lines. The first one he should have left. It's off a free kick. He should have left it for Matty Cash. He takes it away from Cash, who's in a better position than him. And he doesn't head it towards goal. He doesn't head it back across goal into the danger area. Neither nor. The next one, he's stationed on the goal line. He gets no elevation and then just heads it into the ground. And the last one off a corner, this is incredible. He heads it so firmly this time, it goes right back out the other side of the area. This is part of a Premier League center back's remit. Effective heading in the opposing penalty area, and for a man his size, he's 2 inches bigger than anybody else on the park. He has not provided enough in this area. Honorable mention number 2. If your primary set-piece plan is to simply launch it in the direction of Tyrone Mings, then you aren't going to come back and coach the set pieces at this club next year. And I don't think Austin McPhee will be around after this summer, frankly, for several reasons. I mean, number one, it's always hard to take on people from the previous staff. But as I said earlier, Steven Gerrard's staff is already way too big. But he also said a couple of weeks ago that he is evaluating Austin McPhee and the role. And that doesn't sound like a ringing endorsement for me. But also, have we seen enough over the course of this season to be convinced that this role and this individual is making an impact? I don't think so. Number 3 is disruption. Danny Ings celebrated the birth of a child prior to this game, which is a wonderful thing, a life-altering moment you may have realized or experienced yourself. That means we now have 2 strikers in the squad who are going to be sleep-deprived thanks to infants. But I find it hard to believe that if this baby had come along 2 or 3 days earlier, that Danny Ings would not have started in this match along with Ollie Watkins in front of Philip Coutinho. And instead, the guy who starts is a player who spent most of Thursday flying back from his CONCACAF qualifiers, Leon Bailey. Now, I realize that Leon Bailey is a natural winger and that Steven Gerrard doesn't use natural wingers in his system, whether it's 4-3-1-2 or 4-3-2-1. He uses the fullbacks to provide the width and the delivery in those systems. Do I think that Leon Bailey could play in a front 3 and be a little bit more central? Yeah, I do. And I think his pace is a valuable thing. But unless Steven Gerrard completely abandoned his principles and saw something in the opponent where he felt, well, this is an opportunity to have a player a little bit wider, it just seemed like an odd choice to me. And then again, what was the other choice? There kind of wasn't one. And then adding to the disruption was the early exit of Luca Dean, who was being asked to supply width and delivery for those front players. And it is a little irritating that he was able to represent France during the window, but could only last 13 minutes in this game with who knows what the issue actually was, something to do with his stomach. But that then limited the options down the line when Villa was chasing a 2-0 deficit. And let's be honest here, do you have any confidence in the players that were on the bench being able to come in and truly affect this game? Big issue or moment number 2, Watkins misses. And I'm not talking about Ellie Watkins, his misses. And by the way, how adorable are these two, Ollie and Ellie? I mean, this is the reason why I want him to succeed here so badly. He just seems like a really cool guy and a solid bloke. And I honestly believed he was going to crack on this season. The preseason injury did not help. Trying to figure out how to play with Danny Ings was awkward and clunky, and again, it didn't help. But he had 2 chances in this game that could have changed the course of it, and both of them were eerily similar. How easy for me to say, but a confident goal scorer freezes the goalkeeper there and then goes around him to slot home. And take nothing away from Sa, by the way. He's having a David De Gea-like season for Wolves. Look at their goals allowed. He's a big reason why. And he comes off his line and closes the angle well on the first one, spreads himself nicely on the second one, but have you seen Premier League strikers go ice cold in those moments and either curl it or bend it around, go through the legs, go over the top, or as I mentioned, freeze and then go around to slot home? I just feel like Ollie Watkins is rushing things right now. And like so many players in this Aston Villa squad, you just don't know which Watkins you're going to get week to week. And the number 1 big issue or moment that defined Wolves 2, Villa 1, McGinn's mishap. I understand why supporters would be extremely negative after a game like that. Losing to a local rival twice in a season hurts. But if you have 2 eyes and you saw the same first 5 minutes that I did, you would have thought Villa look okay. They were assertive, they were positive, they were clean and concise, and they looked like they were the more likely side to get something. They took the Molineux crowd out of it. This is a Wolves side that didn't have Jimenez or Neves. And this is also a Wolves side that in their last outing surrendered a 2-goal lead and lost to Leeds. Everything looked positive in the first 5.5 minutes. And then this happened. And I don't know what John McGinn's plan was here. He's 1 versus 3, maybe even 4. And I think he was the number 6 in this game because it wasn't Ramsey. He was wide left and Sanson was wide right. So if he's the 6 and he's trying to take on 3, even 4 opponents and he loses possession, there's no cover. And that's exactly what happened. Yes, there were other mistakes that occurred after this point. But I'm sorry, this is the inception of the goal. This is the transitional moment, and I feel like it was so avoidable. 6 minutes in, and you're behind again. The crowds now bang into it. You're chasing, leaving you vulnerable to more goals, which actually they were lucky it was only 2-0 in that first half, because that's exactly what happened 30 minutes later, going 2 behind. And I know a lot of Villa fans absolutely love John McGinn and feel as though he is somehow above criticism. But this has bothered me for a long time. I don't know if Villa is progressing with this player in this midfield. Now, maybe he is miscast. He certainly is not a 6 as he was deployed early in that game. And I've always felt that his skill set is actually more suited to being way farther up the field because he could press, he could tackle, he could shoot, he could take players on without worrying about not having cover behind him. Steven Gerrard was absolutely livid after this goal because it was an unforced error, completely self-inflicted. And I know supporters do get attached to the longer tenured players in the squad, but Steven Gerrard does not care about that. All he cares about is progression, and I find it very interesting that when he was asked about who in the squad has the same level of obsession with getting better, he singles out the 20-year-old midfielder, Jacob Ramsey, and not the longest serving player in this squad. This preceded the 2-0 goal. Is this entirely John McGinn's fault? No. Jacob Ramsey couldn't reel it in, but it's not a great ball and not played into a great area. And look at how easily Wolves play through Aston Villa's midfield. 1-0 is hard enough for this group. 2-0 is a death sentence. Oh, take me back. Take me back to those glorious days, those simpler times, instead of having to recap the subcategories that we do all season long. Did you know that penalties are technically set-piece goals? I'm not giving it here. And Ollie Watkins' penalty was the first this season since Danny Ings scored from the spot on opening day at Watford. Villa's away record dropping to 18 out of a possible 48 points, and Watkins did get on the mark to make it 13 on the season combined with Danny Ings, but everything else sadly stays the same. Next up, Spurs. Not an historically good fixture for Villa at Villa Park in recent times, but you never know in this weird topsy-turvy season. Aston Villa is capable of pulling off a surprise. Let's hope they can. Until that time, get outside, smell the spring flowers if you have any. And as always, up the mighty Villa.